Yo, this video right here is for all my Indians, my so-called African American fam, my so-called Negro brothers. I'm talking to y'all going through black identity crises, which some would say is a symptom of the diaspora, and then others might say a victim of psychological operations on behalf of the powers that be in this region of the world, the West. A lot of the brothers and sisters in the Indian, Aboriginal, Indigenous fam, whatever you want to call it, I want to say that I agree with y'all as far as DNA and genetics is concerned, or like DNA testing companies and getting results, and then them supposedly being able to trace you back to something, someplace super specific in some area, some tribe. Only so much of that is accurate, from my understanding. I ain't got no sources to pull up now. I'm sure I'll most likely add it in the description, do some research. If I do more videos, I'll provide those things, but this is just me starting off, kind of introducing myself and where I'm at in my head with it, you feel me? I agree, because the DNA testing companies give you the disclaimer that the shit is like entertainment. You know what I'm saying? They only taking the tiniest sliverest bit of your DNA, swabbing your spit, whoop wop whoop, and it's only really gonna tell you so much. And then you got the stories where people sent in their dog saliva, animal saliva, and find out their dog is from the Netherlands, or you know what I'm saying, their dog is from South Asia. You'd be like, what? But yeah, different variables, but nonetheless, because I got 23andMe done, I got swabbed or whatever, and they told me some things, some stuff. I want to say this about it, like, I didn't grow up necessarily knowing my Indian roots, but I had the story that we all have where, a grandparent down. So for me personally, my mom's father's mother so my mom's father's grandmother was Native American, Indian, and so that's a maternal grandfather for me. And then I'm not sure if there's any on my mom's side. My mom's story, my grandmother's story, is that her father came here on a boat, and he was like a mixed man in Alabama, Wetumpka, Alabama. He came to Wetumpka, something like that, and he was like known to have like what's said to be a white father, and he had a black mother, and then met my grandma's mother, who was like a real dark skinned lady, like deep black skin. My grandmother is like a shade darker than me though, kind of have her complexion that brown. But yeah, and then on my father's side, I don't know my father's side of the family that well, just how my upbringing was and where I'm at now in life. I'm working on things, reaching out to people, digging for the paperwork, and I'm doing all the things in place to trace my lineage here in Amaruca, you know what I'm saying? I'm working on that. I got roots in Turtle Island, and we gonna do that first to get my head together about it. But I did the 23andMe, and 23andMe told me it was crazy is I got mine back earlier this year in February. I took it December of last year, and they got back to me in February. And I had some results. You know what I'm saying? There was like, I'm gonna just start off saying they gave me 2% Scandinavian, and it was like an old genetic marker supposedly. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. And then I had a Sudanese genetic marker. I had like 1%, 2% Sudanese, some shit, very minuscule, so they say. And I'm gonna say around like a few months later they updated it. I guess they was able to expand their genetic database of Caribbean folk. You know what I'm saying? So like, what probably was happening was people from the Jamaica, you know, the islands and stuff, they know for a fact they been there for this amount of time, and shit, 23andMe probably told them something crazy, and they probably got letters or something. I don't know. I'm reaching for sure. But I guess they expanded their genetic database, whatever, updated some results, whoop wop whoop, and they found my Caribbean. Now, I'm also not raised knowing that from the who my relatives are, who the relatives of mine that 23andMe found, the Jamaican is through my father's side. And I don't believe, like, what's known is my dad's mother was like a paler skinned lady. She claimed Cherokee though, but we suspect that a lot of the European that popped up came through her. I'm not sure about that, because if 23andMe, this genetic testing company, they're like, their main basis is going off of your haplogroup, and then your haplogroup is that whatever that genetic material is that's passed from your father's father, mother's mother, and then it goes up like that. Because realistically, this is what they say, if you're male, you're likely to inherit more of your father and his father's genes, and then for your mom, you'll inherit more of your mom's genes. You know, you not saying it's not possible. Who's to say that? You feel me? Who are we talking about? But you know, I'm sure there are cases where you may have your mother's father's characteristics and then your father's mother's characteristics. So anyways, I digress. My father's mother claimed Cherokee heritage, and my father's father, I'm guessing, is where the Jamaican is, because he was a black man, he was brown. The way the genes popped up, the way that my results came back, it makes it look like my dad's dad is white, because they say, you know, you're not gonna inherit much of what might be your father's mother's DNA. But I've read some exceptions to the case where you can, I don't think it matters if you're a male or a girl or not, I'm not sure, but you can inherit like X chromosomes and genetic markers from your father. So the father can pass on that female genetic material to where probably that is the case. So yeah, I need to do more research into that. You feel me? Bring that full circle. So that's kind of like my background now. What happened was 23andMe, they had updated the thing and they put Caribbean. Now, Caribbean isn't like a part of the pie chart that they give you. It just tells you that, like, when they give you your pie chart results and bars and all of that, the percentages are more so linked to geographical locations. Well, with this, they just tell you like, okay, yo, you Caribbean, so you from the Caribbean region. So under all the stats and the numbers and percentages, it's another little section that say, it says, it just say Caribbean region. It just say we found this region where, you know, it looks like you have ancestry and have relatives and whatnot. And that's how they end up telling me. So it didn't really change any of my like percentages around. But there was an update like a week to 2 weeks ago. In the past couple weeks, there was an update and I got it. What happened this time is they swapped out my Trace Sudanese for North African. And I had some feeling about that because I've been doing my research. Like, I've been doing this genealogy thing. So before I even got the 23andMe, which was a Christmas present from my girlfriend, shout out to my girl, the simplest way for me to start that was to look at photographs, like look at the people of the world, the different peoples, and in my head kind of build up like an inner criteria, like a I don't know, I'm on a tangent. Basically built my eye for the details in like anatomy and physiology and stuff, like what do they call it? Phenotypical or phenotypical, I'm not sure. But I study phenotypes, so like the bone structure and all of that of all the people. And I could kind of like, after you spend so much time doing it, you eventually see like a being with certain features, a person with certain features, and you be like, huh, like, okay, there's something to this, let me keep going in this direction. And for me, it always ended up like Moroccans, North Africans. I didn't see it in a lot of West Africans till I came across the Fulani tribe, and some people are Guinea, some people are Cameroon, kinda, yeah. So I looked at that, and I'm gonna be honest, like, for the people I know and grew up with here, I'm from Detroit. Here in Detroit, like, man, black folk look different. Like, we look African, like we could be cousins and all of that, but it's not the same. Like, I put in like 2 years plus doing research like this and looking at the people before I actually even got a DNA test done, and there's still something different. Now, what 23andMe does say that I gotta give merit to, I give credit when due, is they tell you, when they give you those small percentages, some percentages be so small that they put it in another little category where they would usually link it to a geographical location. Instead of a geographical location, there is none, and it just says here, just trace ancestry, the last few percentages we picked up on, and it'll say, well, mine, for instance, it's kind of crazy. Okay, so that was my point. They said that how you interpret that, those trace ancestries, those last minute trace percentages, is that despite the fact that those percentages are small, they still distinguish you from all the other percentages that you just happen to share with larger populations of people, you know what I'm saying, with a larger quantity of people, rather. And that makes sense, to be honest. If you think about it, it makes sense, because like, that's what I wanted to get to. It picked up my Native American. They picked it up and they got me at I think I'm 0.2, and then I'm like 1 point of some other Asian categories, like Cambodia, Indonesia, Khmer, if I'm saying that right, Khmer, Do I have any other trace Asian? And I think Southeast Asian. It was some generalized category for that area. It wasn't like just Chinese. It was like Southeast Chinese. But all of it added up to like 0.5 to 0.7 Asian ancestry. So I wonder how much of that could be mixed in with the Native American thing. They also have Native American grouped in with it's like North Asian or North and Central Asian / Native American, something along the lines of that. And then yeah, and then I also have Trace North Africa, which I got apparently I got through my mom. My mom had the Trace Sudanese that I was talking about earlier, Ancestry. When I got that last update in the past couple weeks, they changed the Sudanese to North African. So I got that from her. She also has like an African haplogroup, which is L1B1A3. L1B1A3. And then my father is he's a J2 haplogroup, and it's like JL283, I believe. It's a JM12 too. I think it's a branch under JM12, J2, JM12, JL283, something like that. But yeah, so I kind of felt like some of the North African could have came through that. All the cases, it can't tell me everything. I'm gonna have to do more research on that myself. But from the research I've done, like, if I am related to a tribe in Africa, it's the Fulani people, and the Fulani people also have like quite intimate relationship with the history of the Americas. So there's a lot of brothers and sisters and family in the Indian community who like, okay, this slave shit never happened, or no slaves came, or whatever the case be. You know, I agree with them that, yo, more of us left here than came here. 100%. Not that many slaves was here. We was already here. So I want to put that on record. We was already here. Like, facts. What I do believe is that some of the tribes, and I'm not talking about more of your northern tribes, because there's like migrations in Indian history where the northern tribes kind of came down a little bit and had inner wars with the southern tribes who are also on the East Coast. My guess is that more likely the southern tribes who were on the East Coast, they're probably very genetically related to West Africans in that area of like Guinea. You know what I'm saying? Then you think West Indian, Guinea, Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, or however you say it, and then Papua New Guinea. Like, you know, the words in the etymology, we're pretty much hip on that as far as whatever community we're in. Like, all of us who are melanated and do this kind of research, like we know the depth of that. So I know y'all get what I'm saying. I think there may be a relation to that. There's a certain breed of cow that's in Texas, and this cow is like the same cow was same breed as cow found in Guinea. Now, what I do get is that some who lean more African would be like, oh, well then yeah, that makes sense. They brought it there at some point, traveling and all of that. Then you have Mansa Musa's brother who had set sail on the ocean. Kankan Musa, believe. His brother, Mansa Musa's brother, set sail. His papers out there. So like, was that his folks? Because Mansa Musa was said to have Fulani ancestry. You know what I'm saying? That's something to do with like the Takur Kingdom and the Ghana Empire and a lot of stuff that was going on in West Africa with um, around the climatic periods of Moorish reign, when Moors were really prospering in history. But on the other end, they might say, yo, okay, Indians come in all colors, all this stuff been happening. I think there's just a slight relation, like the most related, because the ocean right there, if you think back to the Pangea thing, whether you think Pangea is real or not, I understand it's a theory, but like, this landmass likely broke up because it just looked like certain pieces of the continents fit together. And once you bring that little piece, and then in between there, like, Atlantis was there before water level was changed and then all of that. That besides the point, there's a part of America that did touch Africa. And that's the relation I'm talking about. I'm talking about those older indigenous aboriginal people who were darker skinned. It's most likely related to certain tribes like the Fulani, just right there across the water on the other side of the coast, because the Fulani are said to be concentrated in Guinea and like close relatives as far as relative tribes in like Senegal and Senegambia region, Ancestry in Equatorial Guinea, a lot of that. So the Fulani are distinguished as a people in Africa because they have what they call Eurasian ancestry, and you would say that links to their North African mixing with Moors, and they're practically cousins to the Tuaregs, Sahelian people. You know what I'm saying? But I think these Sahelian people, if not, Fulani, because there are other people, the tribe's been mixing up so long. So I think for that phenotype and the look of it, it's kind of like a Chadic, Nigerian, kind of to Senegal. It's like that line that's right below that separates the desert from the savannas, plains, whatever the case be with the geography and all of that. And also back then, doing research, looking at photographs of people and studying bone structure, like us in the Americas, a lot of us resemble the Fulani. Also want to make note of the quote-unquote coincidence that the Fulani dress up, mimic animals like snakes in their coming of age ceremonies, and they wear feathers in their hair. They're found in Nigeria. They're nomadic peoples. Other tribes there have looked at them like outsiders because just their thinner lips, slimmer noses, and paler skin in different instances. So with the Fulani, I got my highest percentage of African that they gave me is Nigerian. So I just want to say about 23andMe doing their testing for Nigeria. If you go click on and read the information on like, I believe they have like some sections, I'm gonna go back and find it. But if you click into it enough, you can read how they interpret African American genetics, and then they admit how they just don't know much about Africa. There's just so much they only know, so they can only categorize things a certain way and all of that, label things a certain way. They pretty much say that African Americans, most likely, in most cases, we get stenciled. We get stenciled with, I believe it was just under, or was 74 to 75%. It was like 74 point some. They tried to be slick about it or something, I don't know. and then they kind of like fill it in like a shape in a coloring book, like they color it in and fill in the rest, and then they put the rest of the genetics one. So realistically, in method, they're over assigning us African. They're going based on the story right now, the script right now, you know, that the what we was taught in school shit, the what the mainstream acknowledges, what the museums acknowledges, what academia in general knows, like all of that stuff. It just plays along with this charade, and we all know that story. Hence the identity crises we have as an American people. So yeah, the Fulani have trace Eurasian ancestry, which links them to that. But when you look at Native American tribes, now let's take the Bering Strait people, right? You got the Bering Strait people who said migrations happen like that. We now know today that Melanesians, Polynesians, like Pacific Islander people, more than likely hopped on some boats and came in history and created. Because if you look at people of the Amazon, like the indigenous people in the Amazon, they look like black Polynesians. Like they look Polynesians, but they kind of got the Guinea features, you know what I'm saying? They're more like Afro-Polynesians. They have that look. And when all of these tribes and all these peoples, I just want to say for the record in time, were mixing up, mutations occurred where they became the next thing. And that plays along with the criteria that these DNA testing companies and researchers and scientists and scientific sources and material use and reference. You know what I'm saying? This is a part of the criteria that they utilize. So you had these people who are probably traveling over here, right? Like they call this other migration the Bering Strait thing. It's I don't know if it's a theory or what they're you know, how they're interpreting it anymore. Those are the people who have links in Siberia. And Siberia is practically North Eurasian. It's like the lingo. There's a lot of double talk with that stuff when it comes to research like this. You'll find that in the history, especially of these people who were writing this history, his story. So they have like a Siberian link, right? That's practically Eurasian. And they were like more of an Arctic people, so they had a different phenotype and developed certain mutations. I'm not all for the science of evolution and how that made all of us, but I believe in some cases like minor mutations like occurred because of environmental factors. I just don't believe it's dramatic as Darwinism has exploited it to be. But if that's the case, what I find is that what links all of us as melanated people, I'm about to go back to bullshit ass science, because it's deeper than the science of it. The fact that this is conveyed by and or through science. But melanated people, I do believe melanated people are mainly equatorial people. Does that mean directly that we are melanated because we've been genetically made, not genetically made, but like birthed in areas for so long over and over in, around, or near the equator? No, I don't think that, because it can't be ruled out that maybe we just so happen to be genetically designed and placed around the equator. So regardless of what the science confirms in that, I believe there's truth to it. maybe even mythology and some stuff like that plays a role in it. But I believe, regardless of the science of the environmental factors playing a role in like certain mutations being developed, regardless of all of that bullshit, I believe a lot of us who have been in or around, near or around the equator, as tribes, peoples, different peoples of worlds and the continents and all of that, among all continents around the whole globe, I believe we're related. Um, and that's a part of some newer research I'm getting into. So, that being said, over here in the Americas around that time, and before tribes and stuff started mixing up, and before population mutations really developed and newer peoples just, you know what I'm saying, appeared and stuff from different branches, the ones from the south were probably a different kind of Eurasian. Because I found research, some other research I'm doing. I know I'm saying that a lot, but I'm getting the ball rolling. I'm about to put all this information out here for the people. I'm about to get involved and let my voice be heard. But there's a link from Melanesians to Eurasia, and it's because of the J haplogroup. And apparently, I don't think mainstream scientists and researchers really, I don't think they take the time to even interpret it. I'm not sure how deep it is yet, but J haplogroups, which is Eurasian haplogroups, happen to be that the older forms of it, the more archaic forms of it, happen to be found in peoples of these island tribes that happen to be tested. You know what I'm saying? There's other haplogroups, it's not just J, but I know J because I came across this information doing my own genealogy, and I'm a J2 haplogroup. So it's something there. A lot of, there's Fulani, it's people on YouTube, there's people, Fulani people. There's one guy for sure I know I watched on YouTube where he did 23andMe or some DNA testing company like them. I think 23andMe, his results came back, he had like Irish. And I know another guy, this other guy's a researcher and he's Fulani, and his stuff came back. He ended up going into the papers and found out he was an actual African American. Like a lot of us who are digging up our Indian records and stuff, we just all, regardless of what we turn out to be or what we want to be, the truth is the truth, and the truth is not fact, and fact is not truth. We need the truth. You feel me? That's important to us. So a lot of us are finding out that we Indian, like, you know what I'm saying? But this guy, this researcher, he's from like well, if y'all, my last video cut off on me a mistake. I don't know, I think my finger messed with something. But basically the last couple points I want to make, I want to talk about you've heard of reverse engineering. I want to talk about reverse interpreting DNA test company results. Because there's a lot of us in the Indian community. Shout out to my Indian fam, tribe up, feathers up. We as a whole, I won't speak for all of us, but as a whole, people in the Indian community don't feel like they need to waste any time with the DNA and the genetic testing. Me, I just study genealogy so much, from phenotypes to DNA to haplogroups to just how I look, you know what I'm saying, and really looking in the Native American tribes who don't have that type of genetic material sequence for them for our information, at least not much of it. Like, I've just been doing that work already, and I just happen to have my DNA tested. So the fact that I have my DNA tested doesn't mean I have to interpret it the way they demonstrate and direct me to interpret it. I could, you know what I'm saying, I'm reinterpreting it as a descendant of American Indians. And I spoke about how like I had trace ancestry and all of that, the Asian, and they picked up the little bit of Native American, but they over assigned me all of this African. Um, that can be reinterpreted just because of, yeah, a lot of Native Americans died out and they're not really anymore, but that doesn't change the fact that that's heritage, because ultimately heritage ain't really got nothing to do with who you are racially, and then race is an invented thing anyway, but race is a real thing right now because of the way society's set up. So that we have that heritage, and all of that in mind, I know how to reinterpret my results. You know what I'm saying? Because there's going to be certain African genetic material. For instance, Sierra Leone and Liberia. 23andMe has that mushed together. It's Liberia / Sierra Leone. And we know that that was set up by some melanated peoples who came from here, the Americas, and went over there. And there's a whole story behind that about like how it was funded by the opposition and whether those people were ever even slaves, and all of this stuff is like an economic factor for the whole thing even happening, along with racial preservation. And my point about that was regardless of that, like, we inherit the knowledge of being among Indians. So one way to begin to reinterpret results like this is that there's some parts that they're picking up as African in relation to people who are said to be so-called African. That's probably just the African that the older peoples had. Because if you take the people of these tribes, especially southern tribes, if we could take them right out of the 1700s and the 1600s, or shit, even in the last 100 years, if we just take those people and were to test them today, I guarantee you African will pop up in relation. They'll be like, we'll be finding their cousins in Africa, and then we will find a link. We would find that Pangean conjoined continental link. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it would possibly give merit to my equatorial people theory, where I believe regardless of environmental factors, mutations, evolution, Darwinism bullshit, that a lot of us who happen to be situated historically on the equator are probably related. And it permeates like different cultures and civilizations, because in most of these big civilizations and cultures and these history of these continents, like, you have the people that are towards the south that are darker skinned and of a certain temperament, and then you have the people to the north that are of different features, usually paler skinned than those to the south, and are of, in half the cases, oppositional temperament. And I say that because the history of certain continents and all of that, the relationships were different between the people to the north and the people to the south, depending on what continent that was. And India appears to have had the best relationship between paler people to the north and darker people to the south intermixing. Obviously, it appears to have gone different ways in different continents. There was a lot of that mixing in North America, but North America, or America's case looks more obviously invaded, you could say, with the whole Bering Strait peoples to the north, and then you had those Melanesian stock peoples to the south, Australoid peoples. And then you have that same thing in Africa, except for Africa, it's more like Europe. Like you could kind of count Europe with Africa because it's right there. So Europe was just more of the region where these people had, you know what I'm saying, those mutations and those characteristics and traits, and then the people to the south, mostly African. And Africa happened to be the biggest continent sitting right on the equator, soaking up so much of the Earth's sun. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna find the highest concentration of these darker skinned people, regardless of how many came from there to here and how many the other way around. You know. Also, keeping in mind, there's the Khoisan tribe of South Africa, one of the oldest tribes, oldest peoples of Africa, and they are yellow. They are light skinned. But I don't believe that. I'm not sure if that part of Africa is that close to the equator. But I know Africa sits on it. Yeah. So there's a connection with that, and there's different ways to interpret this information, like the Eurasian genetics, um, the Fulani, also known as the Fulbe, or the Pool people. They are historically known to be nicknamed the Red Bone people, Red Bones. So it said the minority of them that did come during so-called slavery times and all of that, they were the ones that likely mixed with the Native American tribes because they blended in with them, but they were also likely the ones to kiss up more to the big bosses in charge. You know what I'm saying? The big white men in charge. They were likely to, because they had biracial looking features, but it was just naturally how they look, you know, regardless of their ancestry, because the Fulani are endogamous, so they've been marrying and interbreeding with each other, um, at least to maintain a paternal lineage over all of this time. So they've been shuffling the same genetic admixture this whole time and maintaining trace Eurasian ancestry. So when I mentioned like these Fulani people are doing their tests and then it's popping up Celtic, Celtiberian, and Italian, and white North African, Moorish. When it comes back with that stuff, like they see the connect with the North Africa thing for obvious reasons because of like Barbary genetic admixture from the Barbary slave trade and Moorish campaigns. But it's a lot of that other stuff, like when you know you've been in Africa for hundreds and hundreds of years, or you can trace your African ancestry and you're from here in the States, and you know what I'm saying, and you see who's who, and there's obviously not much European. It's really all on how like R1B and R genes and E1 and J and all of that stuff, those are interpreted certain ways, and that's why 23andMe is under a microscope in a sense for having Eurocentric bias, because it's not really, in a way, I mean, it's kind of hard not to expect them to want to do that extra digging for their history, his story. That makes sense. So they were picking up these people who know they African, they picking up British and Irish and stuff, and then you have stories about the Black Celts and the Ibery, the Igbo, that's a connection with the Taino of the Atlantic Arawakan speaking people of the East Coast of the United States. The first people Columbus was said to encounter, melanated looking people, and it was said that Columbus had with him a Hebrew speaking Moor for help with navigation and interpreting the languages of the people here, because it was said that these were a Hebrew speaking people that would be found in the Americas. So you have that along with the natural, what do you call it? In the water, where there's the river inside the water, the stream that, like, where you can sail on it, and you can sail like 2-3 times the speed. You don't got to do no work. But the current, there's a natural current that leads up into the Caribbean from Guinea in West Africa, and then I'm sure there's a similar current, whichever current it was that or just route in general that Columbus took with the navigator, who obviously has some connection to knowledge of even navigating the waters in the first place, and to have a reputation for Columbus to seek them out. And on the flip side, mainstream will say that African Americans, what we are really is, like, we have the African slave blood, and then we have European from the slave masters. But a lot of people who was running this stuff just happened to be Jewish. I won't say all of them, but a lot of the Jews were trying to get out of Spain and all the shit that was happening over there, in Celtiberia. So they were getting out of there for religious persecution, and it was said that Columbus was a low-key Jew. So even if that was the case, through reverse interpretation, they just gave us back. This is for shout out to the Hebrew Israelites. This is for y'all. Like, y'all can make those connections with all of these, especially the etymology. It's a lot deeper than relating to who, what tribe, and specifically all of that in the Bible and stuff. I get it. But I'm only so versed in the biblical stuff. I'm only so versed in it. I only know so much of it. So maybe y'all can run with some stuff, but there's something there. If you reverse interpret it, if you reverse interpret their story, like, these Jewish people who was running the plantations, who we was working for as indentured servants or slaves or whatever you want to call it, like, they reintroduced that Israelite literal genealogy into our bloodstream. The catch is, if I'm correct, the ethnicity, the proposed ethnicity, so-called Jewish race, how it's interpreted as a race today, they do it matrilineally, like through the maternal line. Like, your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish, and it doesn't really work the other way. That's an easy dodge for Hijack City. That's an easy dodge for Hijack, because if they did go paternally, then, like, a lot of us, in one way, shape, or form, we would be Jews. But regardless of, like, a lot of us turning out to be Jews, our genealogy, tracing our lineages, would lead back to who's who. We would find out the who's who if we did it that way. So I brought up that to get back to the point of these Fulani men getting tested and coming back with white interpretations of their genes. The first guy, not the researcher, the regular Fulani guy who got it back, he said how he interpreted it right in the video. Bro was like, well, obviously I must be what's in them. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's in my genes must be what they have. And he wasn't wrong to interpret it like that. He had no agenda. He was just a regular African dude who just saw his ancestry results and then was like, what? And had to come up with the on-the-spot, organic, natural reaction and interpretation. And he's like, oh, well then, my people, I must be in them, because he knows there's none of that. He's been in this part of Africa that has not mixed, and happen to be of a tribe that is endogamous and very strict on on maintaining lineage, you know. So the same thing with the other researcher, the guy who's like I believe he's like Nation of Islam, and he's a Muslim, so he feels connected to Fulani and Fulbe people research because they are majority Islam practicing people. You also have I don't know if it was Columbus. It might have been the No, I think it was the Spanish folks who went to Aztec territory, but they said that they saw mosques and whatnot. They know the difference. They know what a temple is and a pyramid and all of this stuff. And I believe they mentioned that stuff. But there's stories of conquerors talking about seeing mosques. A mosque is a mosque. You know what I'm saying? I'm not implying anything, but they saw something, and I just think it leads to that equatorial relation, regardless of who from the Americas is going to Africa way before way before these colonial folks, and who was going from Africa to the Americas. These people were probably just related and was doing this the whole time. And they're probably equatorial people, like the southern people, the Aztec people. These are all darker skinned people. You know what I'm saying? You go back far enough and grab those exact people, you would find African in their blood, regardless of what slave trade and what people were taken from what land, because black don't mean African. And I really, my relationship with the term black ain't even all there. You know what I'm saying? Not how I was raised with it. But black don't mean African. It's all over the world. But we are related, and we are an ancient people. And as an ancient people, probably just happen to situate. I'm sure we situated in different areas of the world, you know, especially some of us who are nomadic, like the Fulani, the African gypsies. Fulani are like African gypsies, and gypsy, Egyptian, you know, the Romani people of Europe, and a lot of the European peoples with Moorish roots, like they're known as Indo-European, or the Black Irish, you know, still pale skinned people, at least today more so, who had dark features, brown eyes and black hair. So they had black hair and dark eyes. Oh, you're black. That's black enough for us, says the Nordics, says you know, the Anglo-Saxons. And but there's something there. It appears the Atlantic peoples are the Hebrew peoples. I believe that's what I would imply out of any of this. The Atlantic peoples as a whole are the Hebrew peoples, whether that be the Iberi, the Iberians, down to the Igbo and the Fulbe and the people of the Kingdom of Sinai, and um, maybe certain Berber tribes, Berber, Eber, you know, Igbo, the etymology, and the Taino, who are said to be a Hebrew-speaking people. Not to mention all of the other tribes in the Americas where Hebrew-esque stuff, you know, things that resemble Hebrew are found in the languages and in the culture. The names of certain states, Utah, Judah, you know, the whole J thing. And there's a lot here for that. There's the Ten Commandments that's found here. I forget where it is, but like the Ten Commandments were found in stone here in the Americas. So there's something here. Maybe the Israelites went around with that. If anything, I want to tell the Israelites, the genealogy is there. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of the genealogy. Don't be afraid to do the work to reverse interpret. Because I know I ran out of memory on my phone, that's why I cut off that time. But there's been intermingling with the Indian fam and the Israelite fam, you know what I'm saying, in the black identity community. And I could see that, you know what I'm saying. I'm speaking on this stuff as as an American Indian with trace African ancestry. And to wrap this all up, I want to say we got to do the work. We got to look at the paper and the records. I'm still digging up papers and stuff, and I haven't found a 100% a fresh out of Africa relative. But I'm doing the work. My heritage is Indian. I'm have to wrap this up. I'm losing memory, but yeah, I'm speaking to y'all and getting my thoughts out as an American Indian, as an American with Indian heritage. And I do believe I have trace African heritage. I don't believe it's as much as these DNA testing companies are over assigning to us as Americans. I think most of us are Indian. I think there's very few of us that are actually African. And to also bring it full circle to my Indian family and all of that, for my ancestors that are African, I do have a connection, and I feel a connection to Africa, West Africa, North Africa. I want to apologize for all that's been done in the past and for my ancestors. I mean, I know I wasn't there and I wasn't the one who really did it, but there's a lot going on in this land, and as an African, as an innate spiritual person, the African in me at least, I feel like I need to honor the spirits of the land that I've been on. You know what I'm saying? Regardless, my Native American ancestors are hosting me, guiding me, and the ancestors continue to guide me, and they live on through me. I want to drop this quick seed, and that's about the Maroon people. The term Maroon comes from cimarron, which is Spanish and Portuguese for savage, wild, unruly, kind of like Berber. So cimarron became maroon, which, the maroon people are said to be described as Negro Indian communities. So even if these were Negro rebel slaves and they mixed with Indians, this is still their heritage because, of course, they would honor the spirituality of this land regardless if they were here or not. And Cimarron also became Seminole, Seminole, Cimarron. So the etymology is there. I just want to give y'all this message. I feel like the ancestors are speaking through me. The Great Spirit, is watching over us all. And the message that my American and Indian ancestors want to give to you all and all of us in the so-called diaspora is that if you take us as an African American and put us in Africa, what distinguishes us from the rest of the Africans is our Native American DNA, whether it be 0.1% or 27%. That's what distinguishes us, along with the other trace Asian, Austronesian, Australoid, Siberian, Eurasian, any of that. And that makes us like Maroons. I know there's a lot of stuff going on like what do we really call ourselves in the Indian community, and if not Indian, we are the Maroons, because who's to say the Maroons were runaway slaves in the first place? Praise to Hawaii, and peace to all the folks. Tribe up, feathers up.